ever been in a meeting and just watched a colleague, or maybe even your boss, navigate a really complex political situation with what seems like, I don't know, supernatural
Well,
ease?
absolutely.
They somehow secure all the best resources, they get the credit for work that, maybe you did, and they manage to avoid all the messy failure.
And they just keep climbing.
They keep climbing the ladder while you, the one who's actually putting in the substantive hours, you feel like you're stuck just meeting the baseline expectation of hard work.
It's this universal and, I mean, profoundly frustrating reality of organizational life. You follow all the formal rules, right?
Right, the policy handbook, the written performance metrics.
All of that. The assumed principles of fair play.
Ugh,
And yet this other person seems to be playing an entirely different game.
a hidden game.
A hidden game, yeah.
Yeah,
One that's governed by a set of instructions you were definitely never given.
exactly. We're talking about that primal gut feeling that success isn't purely about merit. It's not just about competence. It's about mastering this invisible, highly cynical social and political landscape that, well, it seems to reward cunning over genuine contribution. Have you ever felt like there's an invisible game board governing your career and you just missed the instruction manual entirely?
Well, you've just stumbled upon what the political philosopher Niccolo Machiavelli 500 years ago called the effectual truth.
The effectual truth.
Yeah, and this is not the truth of how power ought to work in some, idealized moral state.
Which is what most of us hope for.
It's what we hope for.
Mhm.
This is the frank, naked truth of how power actually works in practice. Machiavelli gave this chillingly amoral and ruthless analysis of influence and control, and, whether we like to admit it or not, that exact analysis still mirrors so many modern organizational dynamics.
With frightening precision, I'd imagine.
Frightening precision.
That distinction you made, what ought to be versus what is, that feels like the key to this whole thing. So what does this all mean for us? This isn't just about office gossip or labeling someone a difficult person.
No, not at all.
This is the deep dive into the unspoken rules of power and influence. And our mission today is to move way beyond the simple definition of a manipulative personality. We want to deliver a complete operational breakdown of corporate Machiavellianism.
We're going to understand the manipulator's entire playbook. We'll look at the psychological profile, we'll detail the specific unethical behaviors they use, and explore the multi-layered damage their tactics inflict on teams and organizations.
And most critically,
We're going to arm you with the ethical, high-leverage moves and strategic countermeasures that you can employ to master strategic influence and, win on your own terms.
okay, let's unpack this. We're going to start by looking at the ancient blueprint for power and translate its principles directly into the modern workplace, from the cubicle all the way up to the C-suite. And this is where it gets really interesting, because the foundational philosophy is centuries old.
But the application is happening right now in your office today.
So to really understand the modern corporate Machiavellian, we absolutely have to start with the source material.
You have to.
And that means we need to travel back to 16th century Florence, Italy, and meet the man himself, Niccolo Machiavelli. This entire concept, which is now, a quantifiable personality trait, it didn't come from some disinterested academic.
No, it came from a political operative who was absolutely desperate to regain his former status.
That context, the personal and political side of it, feels vital for appreciating just how severe his advice was.
It is absolutely vital. Machiavelli wrote his most enduring and, infamous work, The Prince, during the very first year of his political banishment in 1513. Florence had just been conquered by the rival Medici family.
Right.
And in that upheaval, Machiavelli was arrested for conspiracy, he was severely tortured, stripped of his office, and then exiled from the very center of political power that he loved.
Wow, that is the definition of a humbling, career-ending moment. So he didn't write The Prince as some, philosophical exercise for the ages.
Not at all.
He wrote it as a highly focused, brutally pragmatic job application, didn't he?
Precisely. It was a plea addressed directly to Lorenzo de' Medici for the restoration of his political appointments. It was basically a body of counsel on how to seize power, how to maintain it, and how to govern, and it was all designed specifically to showcase Machiavelli's decades of brutal, result-driven experience.
And that openly amoral counsel is still so influential because it just cuts directly to the core mechanisms of strategic power.
It does.
And the quote we have here, it just perfectly sets the tone for that kind of consequentialist thinking. The idea that The result justifies the necessary means, no matter how harsh they might be.
The foundational quote is, "It's stark. It leaves absolutely no room for idealism." Machiavelli wrote, "Men must be either pampered or annihilated."
Pampered or annihilated.
He continues, "They avenge light offenses, they cannot avenge severe ones. Hence, the harm one does to a man must be such as to obviate any fear of revenge."
Wow. Okay, let's translate that out of the 16th century and into the modern office. It's not about physical harm, obviously, but about career elimination, isn't it?
That's exactly it.
It means if you have to move against a rival for a promotion, you don't just give them a mild performance review that leaves them angry, but, still employed with resources.
No, because then they can come back at you.
Right. You have to ensure that if they are displaced, they are decisively marginalized. They no longer have the position, the access, or the resource base to retaliate or even challenge you down the road.
It's the prioritization of successful outcomes, the practical result above all moral or relational concerns. This is result-driven thinking to the absolute extreme. Sociologists sometimes call it economism.
Economism.
Yeah, it's a very narrow, materialistic approach to human action, where interactions are seen strictly through a lens of transactions, cost, and utility, not genuine human connection or emotional debt.
That's a fascinating way to look at corporate rivalry. It's just a pure utility calculation.
It is.
So let's fast forward to the 20th century. Psychologists Richard Christie and Florence Geis, they took this historical blueprint and quantified it in something called the Mach 4 scale, identifying a stable motivational orientation found in, everyday working adults.
Right. And this is the high Mach personality profile. They identified 3 key psychological pillars that define Machiavellianism as a distinct personality variable.
And it's important to note it's distinct from other things, right? It's often grouped in the dark triad with psychopathy and narcissism.
It is, but it's different. Psychopathy is more about thrill-seeking and a lack of remorse. Narcissism is all about self-aggrandizement. But Machiavellianism is centrally focused on manipulative strategy in the pursuit of power and status.
Okay, so let's break down those 3 pillars, starting with the foundation. The cynical worldview.
Pillar A, the cynical worldview. This is the absolute bedrock. High Machs simply assume that everyone else is solely invested in their own self-interests, just like they are. They have this profound lack of trust. They view any seemingly altruistic act with deep suspicion, believing there's always a hidden transactional motive behind it.
So they're emotionally disengaged. Deep relationships are a risk.
An inefficient risk. They operate on the assumption that the workplace is a zero-sum perpetual battleground. And, that assumption inherently justifies their own aggressive, self-serving behavior.
Well, yeah. If you start with the premise that everyone is already out to get you, or at least out to benefit themselves at your expense, then your own manipulative tactics suddenly feel necessary.
It's self-defense?
A form of self-defense, even if it's preemptive.
Precisely. And that justification mechanism leads directly to the second pillar. Pillar B, willingness to manipulate. They have a strong internal desire to use manipulative tactics to influence others and secure those extrinsic rewards: power, status, achievement.
And crucially, you mentioned Machiavellianism is primarily the motive, not necessarily the skill.
That's a critical distinction. It's the strong desire to control others and achieve status, but it is not necessarily the inherent skill to do so effectively.
Wait, so someone can be a highly motivated Machiavellian, but still be relatively clumsy at it? Like, they might lack the emotional intelligence to pull off a subtle deception?
That is absolutely correct. They might not have the superior cognitive ability or the refined social skills that really facilitate seamless manipulation. The motivation is there 100%, even if the means aren't fully developed.
Which is why sometimes you run into that colleague who is constantly scheming but seems totally ineffective.
Exactly. They have the high Mach profile, but they lack the ability to pull it off quietly.
That makes the less sophisticated ones easier to spot.
Right.
Okay, so the third pillar, pillar C, amoral expediency. This addresses their relationship with ethics and rules.
A moral expediency means they are quite willing to depart from ethical standards if that unethical behavior provides a necessary strategic advantage. And the key word here is amoral.
Not immoral.
Not immoral. That would suggest they enjoy doing bad things for their own sake. Amoral means they're free from intrinsic moral or ethical considerations. They see ethics as a conditional tool.
So they'll follow the rules, but only if the system rewards it. If there's high monitoring and strict punishments for breaking the rules, they'll be the model employee.
That is the critical insight. If a system is carefully built to reward ethical conduct and punish deviance consistently, the high mock will toe the line. Why? Because it strategically serves their advantage to maintain status and avoid penalties.
So their compliance is purely transactional.
Purely. It prioritizes results above all moral considerations. It's the classic clinical application of the ends justify the means.
And their motivation is clearly defined as being primarily rooted in securing those extrinsic rewards.
Status, power, high achievement, material wealth, they are playing for the prizes.
Yeah.
And that focus naturally dictates where they end up. Machiavellianism is positively related to leadership position and career satisfaction. In high mocks, they gravitate heavily toward highly competitive fields.
The ones that offer those big extrinsic rewards and zero-sum competition.
Exactly.
So which fields should listeners be aware of? Where do we see higher concentrations of this profile?
Well, studies show they're especially drawn to fields like management, sales, law, economics, and politics. Environments where there is explicit competition for finite resources and high status.
And on the flip side?
On the flip side, you see significantly lower Machiavellian scores in person-oriented careers that prioritize social good, things like education, nursing, social work. So if you're looking for people who want high status, high achievement, and are willing to cut corners to get ahead.
The research points to certain industries.
It clearly does.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't just aspire to these roles. Research confirms that Machiavellianism is positively related to actually achieving leadership positions and experiencing career satisfaction, even if that satisfaction is, well, fleeting.
Okay, so now that we understand the profile, cynical, wants control, and ethically flexible, we can dig into the specific unethical playbook they use in the modern workplace. The research is pretty clear on this.
It is. Machiavellianism is consistently and negatively linked to ethical decision-making. They readily engage in what's called counterproductive work behaviors and interpersonal deviance.
The key here is specificity, right? It's not just that they're generally difficult people.
No, it's that they engage in these calculative, targeted, and repeatable tactical behaviors.
So let's start with one of the most surprising findings from the material. Their behavior around trust and theft, what we call the intangible heist.
This is a classic example of how they strategically exploit what they see as weakness. They don't just steal from everyone. They specifically target those who give them latitude.
How so?
One simulated study showed that highly Machiavellian participants were more likely to steal and steal in greater quantities than their low-mock counterparts. But here's the profound trust paradox.
Okay.
While participants in general stole from a distrustful supervisor who monitored them closely, only the highly Machiavellian participants were significantly more likely to steal from the trusting supervisor, the one who said they would not be monitoring behavior.
Wait. So they view someone extending trust not as a reciprocal gift, but as a strategic opening, a vulnerability that has to be exploited immediately.
Exactly. For a high mock, trust is not a relationship asset, it's a security failure.
Wow.
They see the trusting supervisor's hands-off approach as impunity, a guarantee they won't be caught. They're very unlikely to reciprocate trust when it's extended to them. They have no inherent qualms about using questionable tactics to take the maximum winnings for themselves.
And if they're confronted,
they'll actively try to hide it and deny it.
And as you mentioned, this is often the modern high-tech version of the heist, the theft of knowledge and information.
This is a huge organizational threat.
Yep.
Highly Machiavellian employees were found to endorse behaviors like ignoring intellectual property rights.
What does that look like?
Taking confidential records from work, using proprietary system knowledge from one employer to effectively recreate a product for a new employer. It's corporate espionage, but it's hidden in a routine job transition.
That's terrifying because it's so difficult to trace.
And they extend this to their own peers and subordinates. They'll violate coworker privacy by accessing personal data without permission, reading communications meant to be private. They're motivated to hoard and control both tangible resources and intangible information.
So they treat knowledge not as something to be shared for the good of the company?
No, it's a strictly personal asset. It's designed for leverage and control. And this hoarding leads directly to the creation of information bottlenecks that we can talk about later.
Okay, let's move to lying and deception, which feels central to their whole strategy. The sources suggest they are particularly inclined to lie, but only under specific circumstances.
Right. They are inclined to lie overtly and to take advantage of any ambiguity in ethical guidelines to deceive others. But we have to clarify the motive, which ties back to their amoral expediency.
So it's not random?
No. Machiavellians typically lie only in circumstances that will directly benefit them, either for self-gain or to avoid a conflict. They're not using deception for altruistic reasons like telling a white lie to spare someone's feelings.
It's purely transactional and self-serving.
Purely.
So how does that kind of transactional lying connect to acts of workplace sabotage?
Well, Machiavellians are prone to sabotage, but they run a very specific calculation beforehand. Their self-focused behavior and cynical worldview allows them to justify these acts, especially when their Machiavellianism is coupled with hostility.
Hostility acts as an accelerant.
Exactly. It heightens the disposition and promotes corrupt actions when a clear target is in their sights.
So what does that sabotage calculation look like in practice?
They're running a cost-benefit analysis based on perceived gain and perceived risk. The research specifically mentions them justifying profit sabotage, like intentionally providing misleading revenue information.
Okay.
And information sabotage, like spreading hurtful or defamatory rumors about colleagues.
And they'll engage in this if two conditions are met.
Right. The potential gains have to be clear, and critically, they perceive they are not likely to be caught. That perception of impunity is the fuel for the fire.
So, if a manager creates a loose system where they believe they can get away with deception, they'll just accelerate these behaviors.
They will.
Which brings us perfectly to their relationship with rules and fairness.
Machiavellians show extremely little interest in conforming to rules designed to promote fairness or ethical communal behavior.
Like what?
In role-play experiments, you see things like them hypothetically paying illicit bonuses to increase sales or consumer cheating on service guarantees. They just disregard social rules and are less inclined to follow traditional authority if it doesn't align with their immediate self-interest.
And they even accept passive cheating. That's a more subtle form of unethical behavior that probably goes unnoticed a lot.
Passive cheating is highly revealing. It means staying silent when an error benefits them, like a bill being miscalculated in their favor.
Or staying quiet when a team member inadvertently takes the blame for their mistake.
Exactly. And what's truly telling is that interventions don't work. Studies examining the effect of standard ethics courses found that the attitudes of highly Machiavellian participants toward passive cheating remained completely unchanged even after formal ethics training.
That's a profound finding for any corporation. It suggests that ethics training, which is a cornerstone of so many compliance structures, just fails to penetrate the Machiavellian armor.
It does, because the framework they operate under is fundamentally different. Their lack of responsiveness is rooted in their ethical framework. They are characterized by relativism, the tendency to accept or disregard universal moral principles as situational.
And low idealism.
And low idealism, a tendency not to seek balanced, favorable outcomes for all parties. For them, the outcome is the only moral currency. It makes them functionally immune to ethics education that prioritizes communal fairness or abstract principles. They are result-driven, period.
That's a comprehensive and frankly chilling profile of their tactical playbook. But these manipulative tactics, they don't exist in a vacuum.
No, they create a massive ripple effect of compromise throughout the entire organization.
Right, so we need to analyze this impact on 3 levels: the immediate victims, the work group, and the whole organization, before we look at the surprising effect it has on the perpetrator themselves.
And understanding this impact is vital because it explains why addressing this behavior isn't just about saving one person's career, it's about systemic health.
Let's start with the most immediate victims, the dyadic partners. The emotional toll here sounds severe.
It is. The intended targets suffer from significantly lower well-being. They experience intense stress, anxiety, and a profound sense of betrayal. The most compelling research here often focuses on the supervisor-subordinate relationship.
I can imagine.
Employee perceptions of their supervisor's Machiavellianism negatively correlate with their own motivation, their job satisfaction, and their perceived credibility of that supervisor.
And this spirals pretty quickly into what the research calls abusive supervision.
Absolutely. Supervisor Machiavellianism is strongly associated with employee perceptions of abusive supervision. That involves sustained hostile verbal and nonverbal behaviors, excluding physical contact.
And that kind of environment, it just significantly detracts from a subordinate's psychological well-being.
It enhances anxiety in victims, it erodes trust in leadership, and these behaviors are especially devastating when they come from people in positions of power who are supposed to be protectors and mentors.
And the deceitful tactics aren't just for theft. They're used to build strategic social obligations among peers.
That's right. Machiavellians are masters of transactional social engineering. They strategically use cynical and deceitful tactics with their peers to build social obligations.
So they'll do a highly visible favor.
Exactly. A highly visible favor, often with a cost, specifically so those peers feel compelled to reciprocate later with loyalty or information or resources. It creates this powerful network of obligation that disproportionately benefits them.
And leaves the peers feeling trapped or indebted. Okay, moving to the next level, the work group. It seems like Machiavellians can initially confuse their colleagues. They might appear well-liked before their true motives become clear.
That inconsistency is a testament to their strategic use of impression management. Early on, they may appear highly charming, socially competent,
Even helpful.
even display organizational citizenship behaviors going above and beyond. But this is strictly them deploying integrative tactics, like flattery or helpfulness, purely to achieve their goals. It's not out of genuine pro-social motives.
So the positive social skills are just a tactical tool, a temporary mask for deception.
Exactly. And their self-interested nature means they actively detract from the long-term health of the social network. They're consistently unlikely to share resources or information freely. And here's the key tactical move. They actively seek to maintain strategic positions of power by acting as boundary spanners.
Boundary spanners. Can you elaborate on what that means in this context?
A boundary spanner is someone who bridges structural holes between two groups that would really benefit from direct communication.
So like the engineering department and the sales department?
Perfect example. The Machiavellian intentionally positions themselves as the only indispensable conduit between those two groups. They hoard information, they control the communication flow, and that hinders the free exchange of knowledge and trust that's necessary for productivity.
So they become an indispensable gatekeeper.
By occupying that unique node, yes. They intentionally manufacture bottlenecks to solidify their own influence. They thrive on organizational inefficiency if it means more personal control.
And this perpetuates these ineffective social arrangements that exclusively serve their own need for prestige and control.
It does, and it threatens the overall health of the entire social network. It reduces the speed and quality of decision-making.
Which leads us directly to the detriment of the organization as a whole, the large-scale ripple effect. When all these individual acts aggregate, what happens to the system?
The Machiavellian tactics, committed solely to get individual prestige or power, often come at a significant expense to the entire organization. The research calls this extreme careerism.
Extreme careerism.
It's the successful advancement of individual careers through negative impression management tactics, rather than through the substantive performance that would genuinely qualify them for the position.
So we end up with self-interested, potentially underqualified people in critical positions of responsibility purely because they were better at the political game than they were at the actual job.
Which logically reduces overall organizational success, especially when high-stakes decisions need to be made.
Sure.
And that abusive supervision we discussed, it encourages retaliatory deviance among employees, things like theft, intentional slowdowns, passive aggression.
Which undermines the whole organization's climate for fairness.
It does. And these collective reductions in job performance and increases in workplace strife, they have serious consequences for the profitable operation and financial success of the organization. The aggregate result is the compromised well-being and performance of the entire system.
But what is truly compelling here is the paradoxical fourth level of impact. The detrimental effect Machiavellians have on themselves. It seems the perpetrator also suffers significantly despite their apparent success.
This is the critical human paradox that undercuts their entire strategy. Despite their cunning and occasional tactical wins, Machiavellians report experiencing significantly higher job strain and lower satisfaction with both their current jobs and their overall career progress.
Why is that?
They're thought to be less satisfied because of their exclusively extrinsically oriented motivation. They're always chasing the next title, the next dollar. They're never satisfied with the achievement itself.
And they're constantly engaging in hostile and stressful situations.
Exactly. That perennial dissatisfaction must create a chronic instability in their careers.
It does. A consequence is that Machiavellians are prone to frequent job turnover. They're constantly searching for more favorable circumstances. They're rarely established and successful in any long-term stable role because they're always looking over the fence for greener grass.
Or running from the political fire they just started.
Yes. Beyond job strain and turnover, the source material also links Machiavellianism consistently to high anxiety.
The association is robust. Machiavellianism is positively associated with both trait anxiety, which is a general level of anxiety, and state anxiety, anxiety triggered by specific situations.
So they're inherently more anxious and more likely to experience intense anxiety when faced with stress, like a confrontation.
That's right. And these anxious feelings are often related to their subjective reports of being constantly envied by coworkers, a kind of persecution complex, and their propensity to exhibit symptoms of paranoia and distrust.
They're constantly looking over their shoulder.
They are, because they know they're operating without a moral compass. They anticipate retaliation or discovery.
This sounds like a perpetually miserable existence, regardless of their superficial professional success. You achieve the goal, but you don't have the capacity to enjoy it.
In terms of emotional well-being, they tend to be less empathetic and show symptoms consistent with alexithymia, a sense of disconnectedness from their own emotions. Emotional illiteracy is another way to put it.
And while they report low guilt proneness,
Meaning they don't commonly express remorse, but they are consciously aware of their unethical behaviors and the negative effect these behaviors have on their own well-being. They may not be clinically depressed, but they are often dissatisfied, prone to high anxiety, and disconnected from their emotions in ways that greatly compromise their overall well-being.
the game ultimately consumes the player.
Yeah.
This brings us to a really critical turning point. If we understand the Machiavellian playbook, how does a high-integrity professional master the game without sacrificing their ethics and, becoming a high mock themselves?
This is the most crucial transition for the listener. Organizational politics is fundamentally, it's an unavoidable reality. It's driven by competitive maneuvering and scarce resources.
Right.
So avoiding or ignoring it leaves you politically naive and vulnerable to self-serving individuals. And it will cost you necessary resources and career opportunities. The strategy isn't naive avoidance. It's reframing the game as a necessary competency.
We need ethical political savvy, a clean understanding of power. What does that look like when it's executed with integrity?
Political competence, or political acumen, is the ability to understand formal and informal power structures, to accurately anticipate behavior, and to influence others to achieve both organizational and personal goals ethically.
It's the ability to map the political terrain, build alliances, lead coalitions.
Right. One source called it the lubricant that oiled your organization's internal gears.
That reframes politics from something dirty and underhanded to something functional and necessary for effectiveness. If maneuvering is unavoidable, then skill in navigating it is a vital competency, just like technical skill.
Absolutely. The research shows that politically savvy individuals enjoy better career prospects, they're seen as more promotable, and they're less likely to experience career derailment. But this success is conditional.
On what?
You have to build influence through integrity. If political skill is deployed without genuine integrity and a pro-social motive, it degrades immediately into mere manipulation. And that undermines the long-term trust that every truly influential leader needs.
This is where the political intelligence, or PQ, framework comes in. It emphasizes integrity and strategy at its core. It's the roadmap for ethical influence.
Correct. PQ is based on 5 critical facets that smart leaders have to develop in harmony. The first is futurity. This is the capacity to look beyond the immediate demands, the fires, the short-term metrics, to discern future organizational needs and then shape your current actions accordingly.
So it's not just solving today's problem. It's positioning your team and your capabilities to solve tomorrow's problems, making yourself indispensable not just now, but in 3 years.
Precisely. The second facet is power. The sophisticated understanding and application of different influence types. This isn't about coercion. It's about recognizing and applying positional, expert, and relational influence appropriately.
Understanding who has what kind of power and how to approach them effectively.
Essential.
The third facet, empathy with purpose, sounds like a direct ethical countermeasure to Machiavellian tactics.
It is. It's the ability to genuinely understand and relate to the needs and motivations of colleagues while consistently aligning your actions with strategic organizational goals. It's understanding why people do what they do, recognizing their needs, but ensuring your response serves the greater strategy and the ethical outcome, not just exploiting their vulnerabilities.
That's a subtle but essential distinction. Empathy is for understanding and connection, not for exploitation and control.
Fourth is trust, the fundamental, intentional commitment to building and maintaining reliable professional relationships. And we have to remember the crucial caveat here.
Trust takes a long time to build and a short time to lose.
Exactly. For the ethical leader, trust is the long-term currency of influence. And finally, versatility, the skill to adapt your leadership style, your communication approach to different audiences and shifting situations. The ethical use of political skill has to be governed by these 5 facets in constant practice.
That's mastering the fox aspect, the cunning, but coupling it with the lion, the strength and integrity of genuine results. But there is one skill that, in the modern office, is absolutely non-negotiable for advancement.
And that is strategic visibility.
Yes.
Hard work is the baseline expectation. Everyone is expected to keep their head down and be a team player. But promotion, recognition, resources, reward, all of that consistently goes to professionals who learn how to maximize their exposure to people of influence.
If your contributions are not seen by the right people, they simply don't exist in the political calculus.
It has to be intentional and consistent.
And crucially, we need to reframe this so it doesn't feel like bragging. That's a major stumbling block for a lot of high-performing ethical people.
The key is to reframe self-advocacy as self-reporting. It's sharing measured progress and documented achievements, not inflating your ego. The goal is to build strategic visibility, being associated with your key strengths, making your contributions visible to decision makers, and building an undeniable reputation as someone who drives measurable results.
Okay, so let's get into the weeds. What are the high-leverage tactics for increasing visibility and influence that are both ethical and immediately actionable?
Start by identifying those high-impact moments. Key meetings, quarterly presentations, mission-critical projects where you can show up with intentional purpose. One key tactic is to go cross-functional.
How does that work?
Volunteer for special projects or launch cross-functional groups, like a company innovation challenge. This throws internal visibility bridges to departments outside your normal silo HR, finance, customer success. It demonstrates your leadership and builds relationships with decision makers you wouldn't normally encounter. It broadens your network of advocates.
That leverages the power of networking outside your immediate silo, making your impact organization-wide.
Another crucial tactic is to proactively ask for exposure. Many highly competent people wait to be handpicked. They expect the opportunity will naturally go to the most qualified person.
Which is often political naivety.
It is. Step up. Ask your manager to lead assignments, to present results at the executive review, or to mentor new hires. Managers often don't realize who's hungry for more exposure unless you clearly and professionally articulate that desire.
You also need the power of narrative. Hard numbers are great, but the story behind them is what sticks.
This is about translating hard work into documented impact. Instead of saying, I led a client project and finished it, say, I designed a solution that reduced our customers' turnaround time by 20%, leading them to extend their contract for an additional 2 years.
Use outcomes, cost savings, revenue, innovation to connect your contributions to key company priorities.
Your narrative has to constantly reiterate that you move the needle on the company's biggest goals.
And finally, the concept of ally amplification. You can't be everywhere at once.
Influence doesn't happen in isolation. You need a coalition of allies and, critically, sponsors who can endorse and discuss your work in the rooms you are not in. Seek out colleagues to serve as genuine advocates for your career and make sure you enthusiastically do the same for them. This mutual visibility amplification, grounded in authenticity and trust, is the robust, long-term foundation that the Machiavellian's network, based on cynicism and obligation, can never, ever replicate. So understanding the Machiavellian playbook means we can design organizational systems and personal strategies specifically structured to neutralize the threat they pose.
Whether they're a manipulative peer or an abusive, controlling leader.
Exactly.
Let's start with what managers can do, because it sounds like Machiavellians thrive in very specific environments, ones with high ambiguity.
They absolutely thrive when there is loose structure, ambiguity, and high autonomy, a condition called high latitude for improvisation. Research confirms that high mocks only outperformed low mocks in organizations with loose structure.
Not tight structure.
Not tight structure. Because that autonomy, the lack of oversight, it moderates the link between Machiavellianism and unethical behavior. They need the freedom to maneuver unnoticed.
So the primary managerial countermeasure is simple structural rigor.
Precisely. Structure is key. Close management and monitoring with a narrow span of control significantly reduce the opportunity and the success rate of their unethical behavior. It removes that latitude for improvisation they rely on.
So good managers can spot this.
In fact, politically skilled managers are better able to recognize and discount the flattering or deceptive tactics of Machiavellian employees. They see them as less worthy of promotion. The quality of monitoring is as important as the quantity. It has to be targeted and insightful.
And how should organizations structure their reward systems to discourage this profile from even applying?
Since Machiavellians are so concerned with extrinsic material rewards, organizations should strive to be structurally less materialistic. This means focusing on collective rewards like group or team rewards and gain-sharing plans.
And getting rid of pay-for-performance systems that drive that exclusively zero-sum focus.
Exactly. When success is shared, the Machiavellians' drive for individualistic manipulation is much less effective. These group-focused contexts are extremely unlikely to attract Machiavellian candidates in the first place.
And if they do apply, organizations need a strong, sophisticated selection filter that goes beyond just a superficial interview.
Rigorous selection processes are vital for screening out the most dangerous profile. We have to look for the combination of high Machiavellianism coupled with high cognitive and emotional ability.
That's the profile with both the motive
The Machiavellian drive for power.
and the moons.
The intelligence and social skills to significantly and subtly harm colleagues and the organization. Using available Machiavellianism measures and looking for markers like self-disclosure of distrustful and cynical views during selection can help crack their mask.
Okay, now moving to personal defense. If you're facing a Machiavellian peer or supervisor, what is your principled, pragmatic response? You can't just quit or ignore them.
First, you execute aggressive intelligence gathering. You have to systematically map the political terrain, identify all stakeholders who have an interest in your project, and actively form coalitions and alliances before a conflict starts.
You have to understand the informal power structures, who the connectors are, what the hidden agendas are.
And you have to anticipate behavior based on their predictable, cynical motivations.
Yeah.
You cannot afford to be politically naive and assume good faith.
Right.
Second, you practice strategic disengagement. Continuous power struggles lead to severe emotional exhaustion, regardless of your political skill level. You have to conserve your energy for strategic challenges.
Know when to step back from unproductive interactions, excuse yourself from negative conversations.
Decline non-essential meetings with problematic coworkers, set hard communication boundaries. You conserve energy for the challenges that truly move the needle on your career or the organization's mission.
And the most important defense against short-term manipulation is long-term integrity and transparency.
Absolutely. Integrity is defense.
Yeah.
Transparency and consistently giving credit where it is genuinely due are the best long-term political shields. Maintaining meticulous factual documentation of your work, your communications, your project progress, that is essential.
Because that hard evidence can be used to neutralize manipulation attempts, deflection of blame, or attempts to steal credit.
Exactly. The ethical professional has to ensure their influence is sustained long-term, driven by competence and verifiable trust, not short-term maneuvering.
But sometimes, despite all the preparation and political savvy, the environment is just too hostile. You have to leave.
And that's the strategic exit strategy. You need to know when no tactic can salvage the situation. Know when it's time to exit stage left.
But even in that moment, you have to be strategic.
You have to plan and prepare. If the situation is ugly, there is nothing like blindsiding opponents with the hard evidence you've meticulously gathered to ensure a favorable final outcome. Forcing the company to provide a favorable reference or a separation package on your way out, you leave not in defeat, but on your own terms.
That is the ultimate pragmatic final move, controlling the outcome even as you leave the game board.
It is. And this leads to the final necessary personal defense stance, principled pragmatism. This is the art of achieving the possible without sacrificing your core principles.
I like that.
As one leader noted, I would rather get a substantial part of what I want than to go over the cliff with my flag flying. You have to be willing to compromise on outcomes without sacrificing your ethical foundation. Don't let the perfect, idealistic outcome become the enemy of the good, achievable one.
So what does this all mean when we put the ancient, cynical advice of Machiavelli next to the modern research on ethical influence and political acumen?
I mean,
The corporate prince of the future is not the one who manipulates the hardest or the loudest. It's the one who wields influence with integrity and supreme strategic acuity.
they understand the dark playbook perfectly, but they choose to build their success on the unshakable foundation of trust and verifiable results.
And if we look back at Machiavelli's original counsel, he advised princes to displace rivals violently to avoid the fear of revenge. He favored absolute, decisive elimination.
He did.
The ethical, modern corporate equivalent is so much more powerful and infinitely more sustainable.
Yes, the ultimate strategic displacement is achieved not by trying to eliminate your rival through sabotage or bullying or rumor.
But by becoming so strategically visible, so indispensable, and so committed to documented results, a concept we might call return on character, that your rival is simply marginalized by their own irrelevance.
Your own lack of contribution. That's it.
That is the true mastery of power. You don't need to knock them down. You simply elevate your game so high that their tactical maneuvering just sounds like noise far below your altitude.
And this requires continuous effort, intentional action, and that non-negotiable strategic visibility we talked about. Remember, they are anxious and perpetually dissatisfied. Your strategy is long-term ethical stability.
The final rule of this deep dive is that you can't leave without leaving a mark on the collective consciousness. If this deep dive has given you the courage to master your own strategic visibility and rise above the invisible game board, go ahead and give this a part, like right now, to affirm your commitment to ethical influence.
And if you found a specific tactic you are going to implement, whether it's strategic disengagement, throwing an internal visibility bridge, or adopting one of the 5 political intelligence facets, comment below and tell us which strategic move you are making first. Let's build that community of principled pragmatists.
And if you are ready to keep unlocking the hidden levers of success and learning the unspoken rules of power, wealth, and mastery that change your life, subscribe to Total Life Master and make sure you ring the bell so you're always the first to know the next unspoken rule. Until next time, be shrewd, be ethical, and be absolutely visible.